Hunters the Reckoning 5th edition is here. Is it a complete upgrade from the previous games? And is it going to be worth picking up? Well, you'll just have to watch to the end to find out then. If you're new here, my name's Nathaniel. I talk about world building around World of Darkness as well as the games in the Paizoverse. If that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you join me at the table. So let's start off with what Hunters the Reckoning is. The role you will play, your character, they are just your average Joe, usually a nobody, who has had some kind of interaction or encounter with something supernatural, be it a mage, werewolves, vampires, or something else. Because this is the World of Darkness, you should also know that this is a mature game. Fluffy bunnies, rainbows, and sunshine, this game is not. One of the best TV representations I've seen of Hunters the Reckoning is the show Supernatural. It's a very close visual representation of how I interpret Hunters the Reckoning to be played out, or how it should be played out. But I'm mostly referring to the first couple of seasons versus when it started to get a little long in the tooth and got weird. Your character, your hunter, has seen or encountered something that they just cannot explain, and they have risen up because they've realized there is something they can do about it. Now, because Hunters the Reckoning uses a narrative storytelling system as well as a dice pool system using just D10s or 10-sided dice, the way I envision this working out best for players who want to get the most out of the Hunter experience is largely based around investigation. This isn't intended to be a heavy action-based game or a tactical-based game, although combat is definitely part of it. It's not designed to be the basis of your campaigns or your chronicles. Now, the core rulebook does mention this several times, that it is a collaborative system. It is designed to work best when engaged with by the players as well as the game master, which World of Darkness refers to as storyteller. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what a dice pool system is, on your character sheet you will have skills and abilities, and they will be ranked in accordance from 1 to 5, 5 being the most. Every ability corresponds to a skill, and however many dots you have in that ability plus the skill is your dice pool. That is what you will roll. This has been the same system for every World of Darkness game. What has changed a little bit here is what constitutes a successful roll. When you're making a roll or your character is trying to do something that has the chance of failure, if they roll a 6+ on their dice, this represents a success, and depending on the difficulty of what you're trying to accomplish, you will need 1 or more successes. Now, with Hunters 5th edition, a 6 or more always represents a success. In other World of Darkness games, I used to change the difficulty rating of what each player needed to roll, but you shouldn't really do that with this system. That is because of the custom dice that are not necessarily required to play, but they can make things a little bit easier. But really, if you only have 2 colors of 10-sided dice, you're fine to play this game. The reason you will need 2 colors of dice is because of a mechanic that exists within Hunters the Reckoning. That would be Desperation and Danger. Desperation allows hunters to push themselves beyond their physical limits. When you're playing your games, this is also a resource management tool that is done by your entire party. Danger represents the amount of danger your party is in. Having higher danger levels means more bad things can happen to you. Now, the danger level is mainly managed by your storyteller, but it is the outcome or the results of choices that your players have made, and that is up to the storyteller to decide. Now, there are still plenty of things that you can decide on. One of them would be to hit the like button if you're getting some value out of the video today. So what else is contained inside this book outside of some basic game rules and character creation? There is plenty of information here on enemies that you can fight, secret societies, or government organizations that you can add within your games. There are also plenty of tools for you as the storyteller to help integrate and build out and flesh out your worlds. One system that I'm specifically referring to in here is known as the relationship map. This is supposed to be done by the GM as well as the players to keep track of their characters' relationships and the intricacies of those relationships. There are also many tools in here for you as the GM, how to build a proper horror narrative, how to create tension and suspense at the table. There are also several warnings included here around respecting players' boundaries. This is a mature horror game. You are meant to explore the darker places of humanity, to go into the more macabre and much of the unpleasantness of human society. This, however, does not give free license to disrespect players' boundaries. There are write-ups in here for 11 organizations which you could use as protagonists, or just spatter them in through your game so that your world feels more fleshed out. And let's not forget all of the merits, the flaws, and the edges, which are abilities that the hunters have to help them fight against the supernatural. If you are familiar with Hunter the Reckoning from previous editions, there's going to be some significant changes in the current version of the game. I feel they better represent a more modern take on World of Darkness, but many things that you might be familiar with from the older version of the game have not carried forward. One of the biggest ones being the messengers. In the previous versions of the game, when your hunter was enlightened or awoken to the supernatural presence, the fact that it exists, they've usually received a message or a whispering in their head from some nearly unknowable force. In this version, when a hunter becomes aware of the supernatural, it awakens their drive. And these drives are usually associated to a creed. Creeds are supposed to be the hunter's outlook on life, how they approach a problem. Currently, there are 5 creeds. The creed of entrepreneurial, they seek bold innovation and new tactics to hunt and destroy their foes. The faithful believe in a higher power, and they call upon this faith to assist them in their endeavors. The inquisitive will gather intelligence. They want to make sure they know everything about their opponent, about their situation, before they act. Those who follow the martial creed, they are soldiers. They believe guns will solve the problem. And the underground creed is for those who prefer a more subtle approach. They prefer guile, stealth, knowing the right people to get the right information. Stay tuned for a more in-depth dive of the creeds. Drive is supposed to represent why they do what they do. There are also 7 drives: curiosity, vengeance, oath, greed, pride, envy, and atonement. And many of these drives have overlaps with the different creeds. What's also interesting here is what drives a hunter does not necessarily line up with what they used to do. Someone who used to be a private investigator who suddenly can see into the supernatural world of vampires, mages, werewolves, and ghosts may not necessarily be driven by curiosity. On top of all the protagonists that you can use in your games, such as vampires and werewolves, there are many corporations who are just as corrupt, looking to harness the supernatural and those supernatural beings within it for their maximum profit. Some of which exist in the World of Darkness as a setting, but they have existed across multiple games. The Society of St. Leopold is one example of this, as well as the Arcanarium. Reading through this book, there are many things that I have enjoyed about it, many things that I think work well within the system, things that have been updated. One thing that's really hard to convey over video like this is the physical construction of the book. This book is solid, it is very well put together. I don't feel like it's going to rip apart as soon as I open the pages. And having one of these cloth bookmarks is a very nice touch. One of the things that I did like within here is a change to the critical success and failure system. Those who are familiar with World of Darkness will know how 10s operate when you're making your skill checks. 2 10s will get you 2 successes. And this stacks, so if you have 4 10s on a skill check roll, you will add an additional 4 successes. 1s are still a failure, and if you don't have any successes on your roll, but you have at least one, that's still a critical failure. I do like the addition of the Desperation and Danger mechanic. This is a good visual thing for players and storytellers to create tension and drama at the table. Splitting dice pools has also been adjusted here. For Hunters 5e, you still have to split your dice pool when you're making attacks. But when you're defending, and you're defending from multiple attacks, multiple different enemies, instead of splitting your defensive dice pool, you instead remove 1 dice for every new attacker. For example, if you had a defensive dice pool of 5, your first defense roll would be at 5 dice. Then if you are attacked again, you will reduce that to 4 dice for your defensive rolls, and so on until you have, I think, 1 is kind of a minimum. A couple of things that I'm not a fan of when it comes to the system, or something that you may not be a fan of. I'm not a fan of custom dice for the systems. As I mentioned, you don't need them to actually run a game like this. There is less translation that needs to happen. It could still be done with a regular D10, but it is a way for the game publishers and the producers to make a little bit extra money on extra products, so I can't really fault them for that. I just don't like having dice that can only be used for one game. But if you do like shiny math rocks, these ones are just shiny rocks with pictures on them. And one final nitpick that I have, and it is just that, it is a tiny nitpick. There is a message here for fascists and those who are part of the alt-right. There is a section here in the book where they openly denounce this, and I denounce it too. This is not okay in society. It is not okay in gaming. But they put it in the back of the book. If you're going to include it, just put it front and center. Ultimately, it is just a tiny nitpick. I just thought it was weird that you put a message like this at the back. Now, another thing that maybe you might not be a fan of is if you're more familiar with games like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Starfinder, those games are quite tactical. Your character effectiveness is largely based around the equipment that you have and the tactics that you will use in combat. And while Hunters does have combat, the system as a whole is designed to be more narrative. It is more storytelling. This can make it easy to pick up, but the depth and experience that you will gain will vary massively depending on who's running your story and how well they can create mood, atmosphere, and tension. If you're looking for fast-paced, high-octane adventure, this may not be a system for you. But if you are one of those gamers who enjoys building and developing a character and really diving into the narrative, this is going to be an absolutely great system for you. I can't wait to run it. I'm really excited to give it a go. And my final rating for Hunters the Reckoning 5th edition is going to be 5 out of 5 stars. I'm really happy with what's contained in the book. There is lots of room to expand on many of the ideas, many of the societies and baddies that are in here. Now, if you are interested in learning more about Hunters the Reckoning, I have a playlist on the screen for you now. Thank you to all of my patrons who continue to support me and the channel. All your help is greatly appreciated. My name's Nathaniel. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.